Hello and welcome to Pop Screen, the Geek Show podcast that is genetically engineered to talk about movies starring by or about pop stars. No, the podcast covers such a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from documentaries to science fiction, from country and western to hip hop. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a filmmaker and I write for the Geek Show and Byline Times. And you can also find me on Letterboxd just by searching for the Geek Show, and you can find me on Twitter. Oh no, sorry, the website's broke. I'm joined this week by...
First off, genetically engineered podcast. That's a new one. You threw that
I
out to me,
thought,
didn't you?
I thought it's time we customised some of these.
No, this is not some sort of Greg Wallace genetically engineered meat that was on the television last night.
Previously, you'd have made the David Cronenberg reference for that, but Wallace is the new Cronenberg now.
Professional taste tester Greg Wallace. Professional eater, Greg Wallace. No, you're joined by me, Mark Cunliffe. I'm also on The Geek Show, and I'm on We Are Cult. I'm on Letterboxd. I have a chapter in Scarred for Life, Volume 2, on the early years of Casualty. And I've also had an article published quite recently for Z Network in America.
Yes. And we are here to do one of... I don't often do documentary episodes, but I think sometimes there's a documentary where you have to clear space because there's a bit of an avalanche of pop documentary hashtag content in Britain and there has been for about 20 years now. Any act who have had more than 2 top 40 singles can now have someone, usually Julian Temple, make a whole feature-length film about them. But this is something different. I think it's a more interesting film, although I do like Julian Temple. I shouldn't pick on him. And it's an opportunity to talk about someone who I think we both hold in great regard, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. Although I'd like to see Julian Temple do Black Lace. That would be an interesting one.
Yeah.
Where is the Black Lace documentary that we're all crying out for?
Cutting in clips from Sergei Parajanov's The Colour of Pomegranates over footage of Agadoo.
It could work, you never know.
It could happen, yeah.
But no, this one is Poly Styrene, isn't it?
It's
From
Poly
X-Ray
Styrene,
Spex.
yeah. The front woman of X-Ray Spex. A band who... I don't know. I mean, I wasn't around when X-Ray Spex were going. I get the impression that they were well regarded at the time, but particularly in recent years, their stature and their ranking among British punk groups has crept up and up. And I think a large part of that's to do with Polly, to do with her image, her voice, and the lyrics she wrote.
Yeah, I think she's as an artist, I think she's always going to be fresh because there wasn't many people like Poly Styrene out there in the late 70s, and sadly there still isn't many people like Poly Styrene out there now. One of the lovely bits of we've not said the title of this documentary, have we?
We haven't, no. It's Poly Styrene, I Am a Cliche, yes.
There we go. Yeah. Which was directed by her daughter, Celeste Bell, and another guy whose name escapes me at the moment.
Now, I looked up the pronunciation guide for this, and it depends on whether you're pronouncing it in Cantonese or Mandarin. and
Ah,
I
right.
don't know which one he prefers. So Paul Sng, I think, is the.
Right. Okay.
I've split the difference. That's half Cantonese and half Mandarin, and all wrong.
But yeah. Yeah. There's I mean, I think the point I was making there was I think it's quite evident that there still isn't many people like Poly Styrene out there, because
Mm.
there's a lovely bit of B-roll footage almost where it's just a sticker on on a lamppost and it says, "In a world full of Kardashians, be more polystyrene," and I think that just sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because that was I've watched this film twice now, and that was one of the things that stuck in my head for from the first viewing, even though it is, as you say, just a bit of B-roll. But it does encapsulate something about her that she was, on the one hand, very ahead of her time in understanding how, and this is pre MTV, remember, this is
Yeah.
before music videos really took off, but she understood how important image and fashion were going to be to pop stars while also being able to subvert it and make it work to her own benefit.
Yeah, I think her image is really iconic, and
Mm.
even as a sort of as a kid, there's something almost comic book about her image, really, isn't there? A sort of
Yeah.
militaristic look, which just jumps out like some sort of little figure in a Marvel comic strip somewhere, doesn't it? It's really impressive.
She is like a real life version of one of those like angry little girls that always used to be in the Beano or the Dandy, like Minnie the Minx or
Yes,
Ivy the Terrible.
yes,
This little
yeah,
troublemaker in a army surplus store cap.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah, she is such an immediately memorable figure, and I think like a lot of great pop stars, like Jarvis Cocker's glasses or Morrissey's hearing aid, she managed to take things about her that were not conventionally pop starry and make them into her brand, into her trademark. Most famously, the fact that she was wearing orthodontic braces
yeah,
for
yeah,
most of her like time in X-Ray Spex.
yeah. And even at the time, people were like, "They're not real. You don't need them. You can take them off."
Yeah,
And she's like, "No, they. I can take them off in like a couple of years, maybe. But at
yeah.
the moment, they're cemented in."
Well, that's one of the things on. I just watched the Arena film from
Oh,
1979.
Ted Gillespie's "Who Is Polystyrene," which
Yes,
to me, I would probably go on to this a bit more, but I think is the better movie of the two that were, of between this and that Arena documentary. I would always plump for the Arena documentary.
the Arena documentary is definitely a major source for this, and it's used pretty
Yeah,
extensively.
I
Yeah.
think it's very telling that a lot of the sort of footage comes from that. Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
And even then, as you say, people are going up to her, and the first question they have of, can you take those things off? They can't be real, surely. But it's like, of course they're real. If you had a choice, would you be a pop star wearing braces? Why would? But yeah, I want to talk about that Arena documentary for a bit because I do think it's a really good piece of work. It's one of those great. If you're not familiar with it, listeners, Arena is like a British arts documentary strand that either it is a straightforward like documentary about someone in the arts, which is what Ted Clisby's film about polystyrene is, or it is the work of an artist being presented to the viewing public. And I mean, it still flickers into life occasionally, Arena. It still
Yeah,
manages to
yeah.
get programs out like every couple of years, but the 70s seem to be its golden age for me. A lot of the time when when I think about the arena documentaries that get mentioned and people still talk about, a lot of them are 70s ones.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, like you say, it's like once a year or every couple of years now you might see an arena film, but it
Mm,
was once a week in like the 70s and 80s. I have
yeah,
very vivid memories of watching the bottle bobbing about on the waves to Brian Eno's music coming in, and
yeah.
just knowing that you're probably going to watch something that will introduce you to something that you've never come across before. One of the ones, because I was a very weird kid, one of the ones that's always stuck with me was Max Miller, and
Right.
I became obsessed with Max Miller as a kid, which is very strange. This little St Helens lad of like 10 years old going, now here's a funny thing. Do you want the blue book or the white book?
That's great. I was the right age to love all of the really mad 90s ones that people like James Marsh and Pavel Pavlikovsky were doing before they went on to do feature films. So I was watching like Wisconsin Death Trip and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It's from a time when the BBC had a bit of culture about it and
Yeah.
a remit to educate, which you just don't have anymore. You know. Um,
Yeah, and it's not as if it's even a thing where the public have dumbed down. You can't pass it off on that because you watch. I mean, the one I always think about is the one on the DVD extras for Alan Clark's Road,
mm,
which was not Arena but was Screenplay, which is again another BBC strand that would never get commissioned now. And you do
no.
still get a load of people going, "What the hell was that? I didn't understand a word of it." It's like the only difference is that back then the BBC just did not listen to those people.
No, that's it. If it served somebody, it serves somebody, and I think that's
Yeah.
the way that commissioning editors should think. But unfortunately, they don't do they?
Mm.
It's gone. But I mean, the Clisby film, which is available on YouTube, if anybody wants to go and look for it, and I heartily recommend that they do.
Yeah.
The reviews of it on Letterboxd are really nourishing for the soul because it's like there's a lot of comments that say things like, "I didn't realize, you know." Pop profiles could be so sensitive and in depth and
Yes.
searching. Uh, maybe like a retrospective, I Am Cliche could do
Mm.
that, because you're looking at somebody's career in the past and somebody's life in the past. But this is a film in the moment that was genuinely asking questions about, what it's like to be in that moment for the star themselves, which you just don't get. It's not a fluff piece for
Yeah.
which is a lot of television now.
I was reminded in its content, not its style. Stylistically, it's very sort of direct cinema. It's very observational, with a few flourishes, which I guess we'll get to. But in tone, it reminded me a lot of Meeting People is Easy, the film made about Radiohead when they were doing the
Right,
OK
yeah, yeah.
Computer tour. I mean, that is a very tense, very dark film, and
I've not seen that for years, but yeah,
neither have I actually. We should probably do it sometime.
that's an
Uh,
idea,
but
yeah.
but as you say, it is interesting. It is interesting that someone is expressing ambivalence about being a pop star at the point in which they are a pop star. And I suppose part of the reason why these films don't get made more often is that most of the time when this happens, and I imagine it happens pretty much constantly, they have a team around them to tell them to just shut the fuck up or they'll
Yeah,
stop selling records.
absolutely, yeah. That could very much be a key um, reason to why such films don't get made now.
Mm,
Yeah, that is true, yeah. PR has got a lot better, management has got a lot better, I guess, yeah.
yes.
Or more protective, shall we say.
Yeah, and I think, you can't really talk about polystyrene, and you certainly can't talk about the issues raised retrospectively in I Am Cliche without pointing out, how her, no pun intended, it is one of their biggest hits, but how her identity put her at odds with a lot of the British punk scene.
Well, she was the epitome of an outsider, really, wasn't she? And whether
Hmm.
that's it's not just down to her ethnicity or the fact that she was biracial, or down to the fact that she's even a woman. I think it's just her whole appreciation of what she was doing was so at odds with what was going on around her. Anyway, I mean, she gets lumped into the idea of punk band, punk singer, which I'm not going to dispute,
Hmm.
but I find that it's more new wave to me. There's more. It doesn't seem to. There's more than just snarling and spitting going on.
There were
Um,
not many like original British punk bands who had a full-time saxophonist when they started out.
true, true. And you just you hear a song like "Germ Free Adolescence." I mean, that's such a wonderful, wistful, plaintive song.
Yeah.
You don't expect that in the punk canon, really. There's something wonderfully yearning about that song that just
There's a line, isn't there, that you can draw from Germ-Free Adolescence to her first solo album, Translucence, which is an album that I only found out because of this documentary, and I absolutely adore it. I think it's
yeah.
incredible.
Well, is it her husband who says like she moved away from punk 'cause to do translucence, and it's suddenly like this, she's like this Joan Armour trading figure, and it's like, well,
Yeah,
yeah, but those the clues were there anyway,
yeah,
they are
yeah.
there in Germ Free Adolescence. It is, the clues are there. It's just you got lumped into this thing of like punk, and even like her biggest punk hit, "I Bondage Up Yours," to me is, it's almost like two fingers at McLaren and Westwood
Mhm.
for me, because it's that whole like, this is the punk uniform and this is what you have to wear, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
fuck off, that is so wonderfully subversive, and so, it speaks so much to her being an outsider, that just from who she is, she has that ability to just take in the scene and just um, deliver a message on the scene that will be embraced by the scene, but isn't necessarily of the scene.
One of the most interesting things in I Am Cliche for me is when she talks about the experience of like coming up with "Oh Bondage Up Yours." And of course, part of it is seeing the bondage trousers that McLaren and Westwood were selling, and
Exactly. Yeah.
sort of. But also she has this notebook where she talks about, oh, the I was also thinking of the Israelites in slavery. I was thinking of African men getting off slave ships, and uh, Paul Sng constructs a really great montage out of this, but in
Yes.
a
Yeah.
strange way, the work is already done for him because she has such a filmmaker's imagination that you
This is it.
feed a
Yeah.
word into her and she can think of both an image that it brings to mind and an image to juxtapose with it. It's like she was the Sergei Eisenstein of punk to me.
That is brilliant. Yeah, and I mean, and again, that is an inspiration for that
Yeah.
song. Whereas, can't see Johnny Rotten coming up with an inspiration like that. And no offense to Johnny Rotten, the butter selling twat, but but, but that, I just can't see him tapping into the same sort of inspirations, really.
A lot of punk was sort of sold on being direct, and I think one of the schisms that became more obvious as certainly British punk we're talking about here, American punk had the luxury of not breaking into the mainstream early on, and it could sort of simmer in the underground and do
I think
more interesting stuff.
I think also in to try and play devil's advocate and to sort of rush to the Sex Pistols' defence at this point, even though I've just slagged them off. Um, British punk had a very year zero
Yeah.
approach, so you're not going to look at um, influences beyond in history, or other than, unless you're playing with signs and signifiers like fascism.
Hmm.
Um, you're not going to be saying, what about African slavery and the Israelites, it's not gonna register because it's about the here and now. You're not. It's one of those things, isn't it?
But that is, I think, the schism that became more apparent, particularly as you go into the post-punk years. The whole ethos of British punk was we need to get back to like angry garage rock and roll made by frustrated kids and sweep away all of this sort of pretentious, coked up millionaire prog rock shit. And when you say that to people, they're going to have two reactions for it. The first is like the, I guess you'd call the Howard Devoto school, where they think, all right, so we're going back into the beginning, so we can find a new way forward. And then there's also the kind of Jimmy Percy school, isn't there, where it's like, oh, we're going back to basics. We can just do straight ahead, simple stuff. That's great. And it's like the latter bands generally produced one or two great singles, but they didn't, to me, have the kind of lasting fascination of the bands who wanted to go back to the start so they could chart a new course into the future.
No, I agree. I agree. There's a thing. It's the difference between uh, starting from scratch and starting from scratch, but keeping that simple course, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
you just go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's and that's fine. You know, the good, like you said, the good singles, but
Hmm.
it's they they've got narrow
It becomes a
confines to
hair
work.
shirt.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think
And I
when we
don't think
talk about
McLaren and Westwood sold those, did they?
Yeah, that was one of the few sort of vaguely fetishy bits of religious gear that I don't think anyone has ever made into a fashion hit.
But was it ITN's Reggie Bosenket who used to wear the rubber knickers, and he would believe so. He was a regular at Westwood, and he would buy the rubber underwear and read the news. And he'd sort of wink at the camera. You know, I think he told Jordan that if he winks at the camera at the end, he's wearing the rubber underwear. So I mean, he might have had a hair shirt on underneath. You don't know.
Maybe, yeah. I mean,
He
that
sounds like he would fit in that criteria, definitely.
makes the Hugh Edwards stuff look a bit tame, really, doesn't it?
Topical stuff, kids.
Oh,
Although by the time this goes out, we don't know.
it probably won't be. Yeah, if it helps, we can do it. We can do it with "Have I got news for you?" I'll be Ian Hislop. That joke
and,
isn't going to work at all on audio.
and I'll be Paul Merton. What about a dolphin? Is it a dolphin in a pub?
But yeah, you mentioned the punks playing with World War II imagery, and obviously a lot of that has not aged well. But I have to say, like a mixed race British punk wearing little Robinson's Gollywog badge is
Mm.
still pretty fucking fire to this day. I
Yeah,
think that's a great
yeah.
image.
Absolutely. I think there's a wonderful anecdote in the Stuart Lee Michael Cumming film King Rocker about the
Mm,
Nightingales from Frank Skinner, which I think King Rocker come out just before I Am Cliche on Sky Arts. And I think that is one of the reasons why I'm a little bit sour on I Am Cliche, because it's not King Rocker and it can't be King Rocker, but I
yeah.
think because I'm one of those people who sort of got used to a familiar type of language and format of BBC4 music documentaries. And then when Stuart Lee said, "Oh, they didn't want King Rocker, so we took it to Sky Arts," I thought, "Oh, great! Well, Sky. Once you've seen that, you think, well, Sky Arts must do their in-house style must be exactly like this," and it's not,
It's
unfortunately.
not, no.
Yeah, because there can only be one, I guess. It's the Conor
Yeah.
McLeod of punk rock documentaries. But no, the anecdote is Frank Sinner talking about. I can't remember who he's talking about now, but they're in a club in Birmingham, and a guy comes in with a swastika on his arm, and this old boy at the bar just goes, I don't like that. And he go, oh, sorry, mate. And he just took it off. And I love that. It's the least punk thing imaginable, isn't it? Don't appreciate. Oh, sorry, mate.
I didn't realise that swastika was offensive. You're walking on eggshells these days with all the wokeness, aren't you? You can't even go into your local with Nazi uniform without someone getting cross.
It's up there for me. It's up there with one night in a pub, and there's a guy, and he was the full on like late 70s punk reject. He had I mean, he was a young lad, but he was obviously trying to
Yeah,
revive something. He had the leather jacket on, the pins, the badges. He had the Mohican, and at the end of the night, because the bar that it's not there anymore, but the bar that I used to drink in, you could step out at the back, and you were on the back of a do-it-all forecourt where like the mechanics would be during the day. So you had this sort of weird courtyard around you. And at the end of the night, this punk was going around picking every single bottle up off the floor. Didn't work at the bar or anything like that, picking every single bottle up
just
and
public
taking it to the
spirited.
to the green bin and just throwing them all in. I thought that was brilliant. It's like no future, but keep Britain tidy.
Yeah, no future if we don't
If
recycle.
we
It's
don't,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So for me, he's that swastika guy. He's like, oh, sorry, mate.
You brought up the book, and we should talk about the book. 'Cause part of the reason why I wanted to do this episode after, as you say, having seen this on Sky Arts when it was originally broadcast, is I did read Celeste Bell and Zoe Howe's book Day-Glo, a huge would it be fair to call it a coffee table
Coffee
book?
table. I've got it on the shelf over there. I mean, I could go and bring it if you like. But are we recording this for YouTube?
Yes, yeah.
Should I go and bring it so people can see
Let's
what the?
go and hold it up. Yeah, give the
Hold on a
people a look.
second.
A gorgeous looking book.
It's a big old book.
Yeah,
It's it's a huge book, and it's a really really good book, full of remarkable photos.
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a hefty tome. I came at it differently to you. I read the book before seeing the documentary, and that is another reason why I'm slightly sour on the documentary, because it's the book on
Yeah.
film, really. So it's kind of it was a defeating prospect for me, because if you're a fan of Poly Styrene, you'll have read the book.
Mm.
And then you've gone into the film thinking, "Oh, brilliant!" And then you realise that it is the book. Even down to the interviews, which are all recorded. They're not really in person, face to face, talking head. It's just audio
It's just audio, isn't
interviews,
it?
isn't it?
It's sort of like what Asif Kapadia did in films like Senna and Amy,
Yeah,
except I think you were right. It's like in those films, that's a deliberate stylistic choice, and in this film, you think maybe they just, did the book and thought, hey, there's a film in this.
yeah. Everything they transcribed from an audio interview with somebody like Don Letts or John Robb or anybody like that is in that book, and then you realise that what you're watching is the original raw material that has just been, somebody's just hit play and just sort of, and then, I mean, I don't want to disparage the film, but it is basic in some respects, because it seems like they've just hit play and then took a blown up photo from the book to sort of fill the screen while you hear something that is maybe on the page of that book as well.
To an extent, yeah, I will play defense a bit, partly because, as you say, I had the opposite journey to you. Even rewatching it though, I think there are some things that they expand on in the book that I think are important and should have been in the
Yeah,
film, and I guess
yeah,
we'll get on to those. But I think there is value to the film. I think there is, Paul Sng does a terrific job marshalling the archive footage and making these huge montages of like crap consumer goods and adverts to illustrate the kind of Britain that was motivating Polly to write this stuff.
yeah. I should
Uh,
also just before I sort of I don't want to be the Debbie Downer of the film, but I in its defence, I will say that it's still leaps and bounds ahead of what BBC Four were doing in the last dying days of music documentaries.
yes.
So it has got that going for it, both in terms of subject matter, because I can't imagine BBC Four touching this particular subject, and also in terms of visual presentation. It is a better film than watching BBC Four do some sort of hour-long tribute to Frankie Valli or something like that.
I mean, BBC Four music documentaries on a Friday night used to be absolutely magical, and
They were
then it
when they
got,
first started, they were fantastic, but it's like
yeah,
they just sort of they chased that Radio Two crowd a little bit
yeah.
too earnestly. I think. I mean,
And they got into this rut where a friend said you can sort of play a pretty good kind of, you can have pretty good gamble watching a BBC Four documentary on when are they going to cut to Johnny Marr in that same pub where he does all of his film interviews.
it's true, isn't it? That is true.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you see the same faces on all these
yeah.
documentaries, don't you? As well,
Which
that's
has
the thing.
always been a risk with music documentaries ever since, as I say, about 20 years ago, they became this industrial factory line process. Ever since it became obvious that, like, it's a good low cost way to make a film that has a guaranteed audience. And back then it was always either Sting or Bono, who I
Oh,
guess must do stuff like that on Cameo. They must like sit
yeah.
in front of their laptop and go, I've always been a really great fan of the Revolting Cocks, but
And then give them the opportunity to sing a bit of one of their songs.
yeah.
Murder a song, get the lines wrong like Bono does with "Love Will Tear Us Apart." I think he does it on the New Order story. He tries
Oh
to sing
dear.
it whilst moving the camera around. So he's like literally just going like that, and he gets the words wrong, and he still thinks he's so fucking cool. It's hate him, fucking hate that man,
Well,
hate him, and I hate Sting.
he's rewriting it. He's doing what he does to all the covers in Rattle and Hum, where he starts interpolating his own lines into All Along the Watchtower. Because I think normally when we listen to Bob Dylan, we think he's not a bad lyricist, but he's no Bono.
The thing that really pissed me off about Bono as well with Live Aid, when apparently he went to Tony Wilson and said, "We did this for Joy Division. We're carrying the baton." It's like, fuck off. He genuinely thought he was like, I will take what Ian Curtis has left and I will bring it up.
Because I guess, yeah, Ian Curtis was all about making the world a better place, wasn't he? He was a
Yeah,
real idealist.
you can see Ian Curtis jumping off the stage and grabbing a girl from the audience and taking her up onto the stage and dancing in a really awkward waltz.
I would like to see that. I would like to see Ian Curtis and some random girl from the audience do his sort of weird elbow
That
jutting
would be so
dance.
much better, wouldn't it? That would be
Yeah.
so much better. That's up there with Courtney Cox and Bruce Springsteen.
This podcast was about Poly Styrene at some
Yeah,
point.
sorry about that.
Wasn't
Yeah, sorry about
it?
that.
Yeah.
But we were saying
No.
that they're very cookie cutter
Yeah.
filmmaking,
Yeah.
aren't they? Which were wonderfully satirized by the Brian Pern series, wasn't it? How
Yes.
you just see Rick Wakeman pop up going, Space Odyssey. I played on that.
Yeah.
It's just, every BBC Four documentary would have like Rick Wakeman pop up with, I played on that.
Yeah, completely. Yes. Hurry up, Harry. I played on that. Uh, but yeah, I do think it's a well assembled film given the restrictions it has, and I think there
Mm,
is a power in hearing Celeste talk herself. I mean, the book is very
yeah,
emotional because her contributions are not just in the interview format that the rest of the book is written. It's kind of an oral history of polystyrene, which is great and would be enough to make it worth reading if that's all it was. But she also contributes these letters to her mum because Polly is dead now, which I think are touching on the page. But there's something really beautiful about hearing her read them,
yeah.
particularly
It's
because she has such a sort of human, faltering voice. It's not the voice you would get to do a professional voiceover at all, but that,
yeah.
like a mother, that makes it so much more authentic.
It does. I mean, I won't name him, but there's a letterboxd reviewer who reviewed this film, and I do like him. I follow him. I respect him, his opinion, but he's so wrong about this film. That he sort of mentions Celeste Bell and says that um, she's awkward and she sounds like she's reading from cue cards that a kidnapper would have held up. And I
Right,
just think
yeah,
you really don't get it. This is a woman still grieving for a mum, and
yeah, absolutely.
that hesitancy, that fragility, um, it brings the heart to the film, really.
Yeah,
And also it echoes her mum's fragility and hesitancy,
yeah,
which was always apparent. You know, any footage you see of her, I mean, most of the footage mine from the arena documentaries we mentioned, she just strikes you as this very shy, um, bemused individual, really.
yeah. The standard polystyrene interview seems to be like somebody asks her a simple question and she looks really uncomfortable for a bit and then says the smartest and funniest thing that any pop star has ever said.
Yeah,
It's like she's got no reason to be that anxious, but she really, really was.
I think she's just somebody who really sort of considered things
Yeah,
in huge detail, and I think that shows in her writing, but it shows in, as you say, it shows in just interactions with other people. She wants to sort of really take on board what people are asking her or saying to her, and she'll deliver something in response that, as you say, is eloquent, it's witty, and it's intelligent and does everything that the person asked from them.
yeah. And I think I suppose this is a common sort of thread whenever you consider most stars' autobiographies, but biographies rather. She is not always surrounded by people who have her best interests at heart.
Interests, yeah,
I
yeah,
think,
it's
I mean, Falcon, the sort of the
yeah, it's
vaguely managerial figure, and her boyfriend at the start is a very ambiguous character.
still can't get a handle on him. It's a
Yeah,
strange, almost Svengali type role, isn't it? And I think
yeah,
somebody says it. I can't remember who says it, but I think somebody says in the film that they don't think he was malevolent in any way. They don't think he was using her in any way, but just the situation that they were in just couldn't
yeah.
cater that kind of relationship. It's
That's
it's
one of
hard,
the
isn't it?
it's one of the things that I think the book changed my mind on a bit because it's like when you watch the film, you do feel a bit uneasy about that, and you think, well, people would be a bit more cautious about that now, but he doesn't seem to be like an actively hostile guy. But the book does mention that he was probably the person who like was behind pushing Law of Logic out of the band,
Yeah, that's an interesting
which
one,
is it's
isn't it?
very
Yeah.
odd that that isn't in the film, I think.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, Laura's sort of role is sort of on the sidelines a bit, and then it sort of they will sort of discuss her more in depth towards the end. When Polly joins the Hare Krishna movement because she was there as
Mm.
well, and that's when you sort of really get a sense of her, I think. Whereas before that, it's just like, and this is the band, in
Yeah.
the film a little bit, even down to like, because they manipulated her as much as they literally manipulated her on the album cover, the same way as they manipulated Polly as well, to sort of, I suppose it's early
Slim.
Photoshop, isn't it?
Yeah, to airbrush them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very strange. Which, of
It's
course,
it's one of those things that's very strange, but also crushingly banal in that you have someone whose entire image is based on the fact that she doesn't look like your standard sort of glamorous, conventionally attractive pop star, and their first thought about putting her on an album cover is, can we make her look like a glamorous, conventionally attractive pop star? And it's like, wow, you really don't know what you've got
yeah,
here, do you?
yeah, it's just the most bizarre creative marketing decision possible, really, which
Mm.
is sadly unsurprising. But it's like that famous photo as well, isn't it? Was it an NME photo where they've got like her and Pauline Black and Debbie Harry,
Yes.
Chrissy Hind, and what have you? And it is that kind of like juxtaposition thing going on, isn't it? Because
Mm.
you've got Debbie Harry there and what have you. But my eyes will always go to Poly Styrene, not only because she's at the front, but she just looks like the most interesting person in the room.
It's
And
funny that,
that's no mean
yeah.
feat, really. That's no mean feat with the talent involved.
No, absolutely. I mean, that is for anyone who hasn't seen the photo, it is well worth looking at. But an NME cover from the 1970s with Pauline Black, Debbie Harry, Poly Styrene, Chrissy Hind, Susie Sue, and I think it's Viv Albertine.
Yes,
Is it?
yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I'm just
yeah.
trying to race through the book to see if I can find it, but
That's okay. I'll cover for you. I'll cover
we
for
could
you.
be here all day, couldn't we?
The funny thing is, the anecdote in that book is Pauline Black says that her and Polly were both really nervous because they
Yeah,
both assumed it was going to be all about Debbie. And I think,
yeah.
understandably, she
You're
was
gonna
the
assume
biggest
that, aren't you? Yeah,
international
yeah.
star. Yeah. But it isn't. And as you say, your eye is drawn to them. They're sat at the front. They actually look like they're having fun and not posing for a
They do,
photograph.
they do. There we go.
Yeah, it's such a great
It's a
photo.
brilliant photo, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
And there is a sense of like, well, we'll put the two black women at the front, which is a bit. And I think Pauline Black does mention that it's like they've
Hmm.
put us together kind of thing. But it's yeah. Polystyrene piqued my interest, and I thought, well, I'm not going to be the only black person on the shoot because invariably one is. It just felt like, oh, there's two of us. That's quite good. We just kind of looked at each other and thought, well, we'll sit together in this photo. I think you can tell from the expressions on our faces in that photo that we're not entirely at home. I don't know.
Yeah, I would never have got that from the photo if she hadn't said it.
No, I mean, Pauline Black looks a little bit sort of
Yeah,
ill at
yeah.
ease, but I don't think polystyrene does at all.
No, not at all.
And if she does, she's hiding it really well because it just looks like a very happy, smiley photo of a very, you know, interesting person.
Yeah.
She's not doing the Chrissy Hine. I love Chrissy Hine, but she's not doing the Chrissy Hine thing of looking moody and cool as fuck.
Well,
That
that is
that
the thing,
typical
isn't it?
rock star pose.
Yeah, maybe that's why they think they're ill at ease because they're there with people like Chrissy Hind and Debbie Harry who sort of strike a pose every time they move, and
Yeah,
that's what they're blessed with. They
yeah.
are like infinitely photogenic, and maybe they just felt awkward compared to that. But I don't think it's like a sad kind of awkwardness or an uncomfortable awkwardness. I think it's just
Yeah.
goofy and enjoyable.
There's that sense. I mean, you could do a whole podcast dissecting that photo, really, and looking at
Yeah, yeah.
every single one of them. But there's that sense of I think you would, wouldn't you? If you're a biracial girl with braces,
Mm,
uh, and you're not out there to propel this image of like sex or anything like that.
Mm.
and you're told that you're sharing a photo shoot with Viv Albertine, Debbie Harry, Chrissy Hind, you're gonna be a bit like, "What? Who am I? Am I the guy? Am I the person who's won the prize that day?" You
Yeah, yeah,
know, it's going to play on that sort of self
yeah.
consciousness and that
And it
fear of how you're going to come
unfortunately,
across. Yeah.
she did have a lot of self consciousness to spare, and this was the key reason why X-Ray Spex split up, and also why they never had the successful reformation that a lot of their peers had. They did a number of very successful one-off shows, but I think, as Celeste points out, there were people going around saying, "Oh, that was great. We've got to get you guys back on the road." And she just thought, "Wow, you do not know what my mother went through just to get up and give one great show."
Yeah. Yeah. That's true, and it's sad that that is the way that the music industry is, isn't it? You're a
Mm,
success, people rediscover you, and then it's like, well, we've got to push that. It's not
yeah,
like you can't just be, who you are. They don't. It's a weird one, music, because the whole thing is about get you on the road,
yeah,
do a new album. Either or both, ideally. It's not like just you've done that now.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, in other sort of fields, there's the possibility of having a graceful slowing down of the career, isn't there?
Mm.
That,
Yeah,
novelists do not write a book a year for their whole life.
exactly. Yeah,
Actors
yeah.
do not turn up in like every single big movie a year for the
You get
whole
the
of their
wonderful, yeah,
career.
exactly. You get the wonderful era period where you're just doing cameos if you're an actor, I guess,
Yeah,
and you steal
yeah,
the scene or you steal the film with a well placed cameo. It's not like that for music stars. It's like, no, we've got to get you back on the road, and it must be fucking grueling. Never mind,
yeah,
taking into the demons that she had. The idea of like, oh, people have rediscovered you again, right? Let's get you as a 12-date tour and up and down the country.
yeah.
Fuck off.
Just the physical toll that it must take on people who are middle-aged or older. I mean, as much as I would love this to be the case, not everyone is Ron and Russell Mael.
No, that is true. That is true. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And it, as we learned from Glastonbury this year, you're completely laid bare. I mean, you look at Debbie Harry
yeah.
at Glastonbury. The the horrible comments that were coming out as soon as she took
Oh
to the
God,
stage. It's just
yeah, yeah,
she's 76, for God's sake. And yeah, I get there's that argument then. It's like, well, she's 76. She shouldn't need to be doing that. It's like, but yeah, but that's the industry that you're in, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
They do expect you to do that, unfortunately. You either retire completely and just move away from it, and
mm,
then have the Daily Mail constantly whatever happened to and hiding behind bins,
yeah,
taking photos of you, which would probably look infinitely worse than whatever anybody thought she looked like at Glastonbury.
yeah. Completely, yeah.
The only
It,
person who
it's
gets away with it is Kate Bush, I think. But then she's always played to her own rule book of like, no, I'm not going to do a tour. That's not what
yeah,
I'm about.
yeah.
You you either take what I'm putting out there or you leave it.
Yeah, I was thinking about Kate Bush and the fact that she now lives in, I imagine a windmill, probably a windmill like Jonathan Creek, and she only comes out once every 5 years. And that seems to be, a very good model for the late career artist, in my
It'd be good, wouldn't it?
opinion.
But also now
Yeah.
you've said like Kate Bush lives in a windmill like Jonathan Creek, and I'm suddenly thinking of an idea that she should have her own sort of Saturday night detective drama.
Oh
Kate
God,
Bush
I mean,
investigates. It'd be brilliant, wouldn't
yeah, who wouldn't watch that?
it? Be like, it'd almost feel like, nobody will remember this, but there was a show in the early 90s called Moon and Sun with Millicent Martin playing a fortune teller who
Right?
solved mysteries. I can imagine it'd be a bit like that, really.
I just want her to be paired with like a no-nonsense flatfoot who just sort of every time she says, "Right, I don't know if you're familiar with the teachings of G.I. Gurdjieff." It's like, fucking hell, not again.
No, I've got it now, right? Kate Bush and Idris Elba, BBC Primetime.
Yes.
I got time for your whimsical bullshit, Kate. Not
I'm not
more
getting in
fake
an all-round
eccentricities.
accumulator. But
Oh,
yeah, I mean,
fantastic.
the great thing about the Poly Styrene story, for all, it is a very sad story. It's a sad film, it's a sad book, but X-Ray Spex and Polly in her solo career are being rediscovered,
Yeah.
and I've been thrilled that recently we live in a sort of golden age of X-Ray Spex needle drops in extremely good
We
films.
really do, yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
It's you'd never predict it, would you? But it does seem to be the thing at the moment, and I just hope it's not going to be sort of like done to death, like John Denver needle drops were a few years ago as well.
Oh
It's just everywhere
yes.
you turn, there was a John. You fill up my senses.
Yeah.
It's like, but yeah, it does speak of a cultural reach, and
It's
a
happened in
longevity.
films that have some sort of shared ethos
Yeah.
with X-ray specs as well, which I think has been great because you've got I Am a Poser turning up multiple times in Henry Selick's Wendell and Wild. And my film of the year so far, I think, I don't think anything's shaken this, is Polite Society by Nida Manzoor,
Oh,
which
right, okay.
ends with Identity.
Right, I haven't seen that. So you've said that's your film of the year. I'm definitely filing that one away then. Yeah.
So much fun. Like
Right.
everything you want a film from the author behind Fugitive of the Judoon to be, in my opinion.
So it's not Barbie. Barbie's not film of the year then.
Barbie is close.
Ooh, see,
Barbie is
Barbie is
so
currently film
close.
of the year for me. Yeah, but then my sort of like it's just very weird tastes, really, isn't it?
Are you finding that you're having a sort of zeitgeist reconnection moment? Because I remember during like summer blockbuster season last year, I just thought, I don't give a fuck what's out. You know, these are movies for kids. I'm old. And now I'm just running around going, have you seen Barbie yet? Have you seen Barbie yet?
I realized I went to see Barbie yesterday, and I realized that about 3 rows behind me was a mum, a daughter, and another sort of like older daughter, I think, or maybe sister or whatever. I'm not sure. Um, and I'm sat in the front, near the front, on my own, and I got the feeling that I probably, as a kid, was probably like, "What's that weird man doing watching? What's that weird man on his own there?" But I've become that weird man, and I'm quite happy with that. I
Yeah.
am. I have become that weird man. I am the destroyer of worlds. But no, I took a look at my letterbox stats yesterday, and they just do like those top sort of like the ones you give 5 to, don't they? As you go
Yeah.
into your stats of the release this year, and it's a weird lineup of like Barbie, Mission Impossible, the new one, which the name continues to escape me. It's not Fallout, is it? Dead Reckoning,
It's Dead Reckoning Part 1, or
Part
the
One. Yeah.
Midropole, as no one's calling it.
I'll start calling that now. Well, it's I've got Barbie, I've got Midropo, and then I've got Once Upon a Time in Northern Ireland, the BBC's recent epic telling of the Troubles. And then what was the other one? There's another weird off-kilter one as well. It's just like, and then further down you got the Wham documentary, and then I just think, yeah, just own it, Mark. Just be who you are now. Just a
I
man of
was
weird, conflicting tastes.
I was thinking when you said like the films you'd rated 5 stars, I didn't realize you meant films that came out this year. I thought it
Oh
was
yeah,
just like
the
reviews. So it's oh, so it is.
yeah that
I
just
was
came out
expecting
this year. Yeah,
right, yeah. So yeah, because
which
if it
just makes it
wasn't, I
even.
was expecting it to just be like you know, Nuts in May,
Yeah,
some
yeah. Oh
depressing
yeah.
documentary about the invasion of El Salvador, and Barbie.
That's it. That's true. Yeah, so I've got Barbie. I've got Mission Impossible. What did we call it?
Metropole.
Midrapo. Once Upon a Time in Northern Ireland. Then Demon 79. Then Rye Lane. Then Wham. Then I can't do the. It's a very obscure. I can't. I'm not good on the Welsh pronunciation. It's Ison, I think it's called, which is
Oh
the noise.
yes.
And then Best Interest with Sharon Horgan and Michael Sheen. This is a weird eclectic mix of current like top five or top. Well, no, I think it's the first row of 5 stars and the rest of 4 stars. But yeah, where do you expect a film about a man threatening to go on hunger strike if Margaret Thatcher doesn't give Wales its own Welsh language channel? Well, not next to, but near. Well, yeah, next to Wham documentary. Oh, and just a few down from Barbie. It's
That's pretty wild. Yeah, that's really something. But
yeah,
yeah,
but
where,
that's what
where
that's.
can to draw it to a close? Where can people find your weird reviews of random shit, Mark?
Well, mainly Letterboxd is my all that shite goes on Letterboxd, but you can find me at the Geek Show and We Are Cult. Um, where else do I write, Graham? Oh,
um, yeah,
my brain always breaks when I talk to you, so I don't
you've
know.
got that chapter in Scarred for Life, Volume 2 that
I
we
do,
mentioned.
yeah, I do, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
um,
um,
yeah. I think that's about it. And here, when you
and
can put up
here.
with me for an hour, here usually. Um, I would wholly recommend the book Day-Glo.
Hmm,
Um, and I would probably, and I do recommend this film, even though I'm a bit down on it. I do recommend this film, but I would probably advise anybody who wants to know more about polystyrene to do your way, to watch the film and then read the book, because I think you'll get
yeah,
a little bit more out of it as opposed to what I did, because that's a good way. And if you're a newcomer, this is a really good sort of introduction piece. The film, it's a really good grounding introductory piece to who she is.
yeah.
Um, Also, can I quickly mention one of my favourite things is the
Go
fact
on.
that John Robb is in this documentary, Mancunian music legend John Robb, who
Hmm,
you don't see him, but he's a man who once seen, never forgotten. He's sort of complete. He's still rocking the Mohican. It's like that,
yeah.
bald Mohican, whatever. But I always remember there's a really good. I think it's still on YouTube actually. There's a really good documentary made by my local TV broadcaster Granada when 24 Hour Party People came out. So it was, I think it was called Who is Tony Wilson? Or that, no, tell that, it's called That Tony Wilson. As in, That
That's good.
Tony Wilson. And then when he died, um, 10 years later, they repurposed it. So it became like an obituary piece, but it was
Hmm,
basically that program with a bit of extra. John Robb's in that as a talking head, um, and it's just brilliant. You've got to see it. You in particular, Graham, have to see this because it looks like he's being recorded like me in his bedroom. So it's
yeah.
like just posters on a wall, and but he looks like he's sat on his bed, and he's got the biggest fuck off dog you've ever seen next to him, and his hand is round the dog's mouth throughout the interview because the dog must be barking his fucking head off. It's genius. It's like, so when I see John Robb's name pop up in this film, it's like, please cut to him, because he might still be sat on that bed with a dog, and he's hand round the dog's maw going, "Shut up, Tyson! Shut up!"
John Robb is like he has a couple of interview excerpts in this film, but it's not quite as you wouldn't guess the role that he had in Polly's life from this because the book just has loads of like it's one step away from her just writing his name and putting hearts around it in
Yeah,
a
that is
school
true.
exercise
That
book.
is true. That is very true,
It's
isn't it? Yeah,
great.
bless. Yeah, she's just a wonderfully. The thing is, you know, the great thing about chatting about her today is that you just can't help but, even though she went through a lot of tragedy and heartache, you can't help but smile when you think about her, and
Yeah,
that's that's her present to us. It's just a shame we couldn't give a certain present back that might have made her smile a bit more. But yeah,
yeah.
it's she does make you smile.
No, I completely agree, and I think that's a wonderful note to sign off on.
Oh,
But yes, I don't know when this will be going out. I might bump it forward because we've made so many jokes that are going to age like milk on this thing. But we will be back in a fortnight's time with more pop screen. Until then, I've been Graham,
and I've been Mark.
and we'll see you in a fortnight's time.